Here we go. Hopefully first annual college baseball men's college World Series WFUV preview. I'm Barrett Spritzer, joined by Tucker Austin and Max Spitza. And boys, how we doing as we prepare for this men's college World Series?
Yeah, I'm hype. I'm hyped for this CWS in a way that I haven't been for the CWS in a while. I didn't always follow college baseball, but over the past couple years, I've started to get into it like more and more. But I mean, this year, like main headline for me is that none of these teams were here last year.
Yeah, this
So
is I think the first time in at least 3 years that I can remember, just off the top of my head, that there's been no repeat teams. So
yeah,
it's a big thing.
I'm really excited about that too. It's also cool you get to see some guys that you kind of used to play with and play against playing this year, and definitely a unique experience. Never thought I'd see these guys again on a big stage like this. But like it's definitely going to be awesome. It's definitely the best part of the year for baseball. Like I know you get the World Series, you get all that, but the College World Series is definitely the best time for baseball around the world.
Yeah, you hit on that, Max. I mean, we're like right at that age here where like the guys who are playing are guys we, if not played with or played against, at least knew of growing up, right? Like, I mean, you're from Arizona, so I mean, this Arizona team and the Oregon State team, who's also heavily Arizona, you probably played around. I mean, I'm from Texas, obviously, so obviously there's a lot of Texas people all over the place. You know that we're in that like great age where not only is it great baseball, but it's also like players you know, great players you know, which is kind of a an awesome feeling and just a kind of a surreal experience that kind of makes you feel, hey, we're getting pretty old now, huh? Like there was a time when you were growing up and you were watching this, the 21-year-old guy seemed so old, and now it's like, oh, that's me. And here I am sitting on my couch, sitting on my couch at
Watching
07 watching
them
these guys.
play.
Yeah.
No,
Thinking about how
watching
many jello
guys
shots I
like
can have.
yeah, watching guys like Jack Caglianone come up for the Royals and he's 21,
Yeah.
like just turned 21. It's like it's really crazy.
Jacob Wilson for the A's, I think is
Hmm.
might still be 20. Like it makes you feel a certain way. But yeah, so without further ado, we'll get right into this breakdown. We'll lead it off with just some team breakdowns, let you know kind of our thoughts on every team, how we're doing, and then we'll get into some predictions through it all. But we'll start out with Coastal Carolina, the kind of not a surprise team, but it's good to see them back. This is their second appearance in the College World Series all time since their other appearance was when they won it all in 2016. So that that's a it's a pretty good sign, pretty good history that you like to rely on there. 21 times they've made a regional, four times they've won that regional as well. So that's for a smaller school. They've had some very good postseason pedigree. Notable alumni from Coastal Carolina. Let me know if you've heard of these guys. Tommy LaStella for the Angels for a while. Tucker, I mean, you're a big MLB guy. I'm sure you can shout out some of the teams he's played for.
Oh,
I
Listella,
The Mariners. I know he was on the Mariners for a little bit.
I think dude, Listella's a rough pull for me. I'm East Coast filled, bro.
Yeah, Coastal
I don't
Carolina.
watch
Not a
West Coast baseball.
So one shocking thing as I was doing my prep for this was finding out, like, I was like, oh, they won in 2016. They had to have some MLB players. They really did. I don't think a single person from that 2016 national championship team made the MLB, which was a fun thing to find out for me. But this Coastal Carolina team this year, 53 and 11, great record, 26 and 4 in a very competitive Sun Belt conference, which is, it's a Southern sports conference, so obviously the baseball is going to be good. But honestly, could argue that it's a top five conference in baseball, maybe top four, depending on how you see the Big Ten, which I'm personally not a big lover of Big Ten baseball. So I think there's a definite argument that the Sun Belt Conference could be the fourth best conference in college baseball. But 53 and 11, 26 and 4, and the longest winning streak in the country currently at 23 wins. Boys, how are we seeing Coastal Carolina right now?
I mean, you hit it right there. That win streak, 23 game win streak heading into Omaha, like you got to be feeling good about that big of a heater going, especially like you roll through the playoffs, you don't pick up a single loss through regionals or supers. I mean, they swept number 4 Auburn in the supers, and not that the rankings meant that much when it came to the regionals and super regionals because there were upsets all over the place this year in college baseball. Um, but still, it holds plenty of merit that Coastal Carolina got by Auburn, and it only took them 2 games. at Supers. I think this is a team that's almost built for the College World Series, just because they're really, really scrappy. They're ninth in the nation in sack bunts this year, and that leads the field at Omaha of all the teams there. So they know how to move runners around. And they know how to knock them in. And
They also
the,
lead the
the
nation in hit batters. 170 times they've been hit by pitch this year.
so like this is a team that knows how to win games in weird ways. So that's one of the reasons why I look to them to make one of the deeper runs out of any of the teams that are here. They've also got a great trio of starting pitchers between Cameron Flukie, Jacob Morrison, and Riley Eichhoff. They all have great numbers, and they all combine for an average of 6.1 innings pitched per game in this postseason. They're getting plenty of length out of their starters, and they have three guys they can go to. That's a lot of depth that not every team in Omaha can say that they have. So I think they have length in terms of the pitching staff. I think their hitting is really, really smart, and they're built to win a couple of games, maybe a few games here in Omaha.
Yeah, and I think just like you were saying, both of you actually, they're a scrappy team, and you don't see that a lot in college baseball anymore. They've kind of gone away from the sack bunts, the hit and runs, but Coastal Carolina, they've stuck true to that, and I think that's going to be a big reason why they win. Is just because, I mean, they do have some notable players on the team, but it's no one that you're seeing on these other teams where they're nationally stand out, right? Every time the MLB draft comes up, at least a guy from one of the teams, maybe not Murray State, but one of the other teams shows up on that draft board. So it's very much a scrappy team, and I think that's definitely, I agree with you, Tucker. It's going to end up being what works for them because most teams aren't used to a team that's not going to give up, and I think that's exactly what they do.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I'll have to add to that, Max, to kind of disagree with you on is that I think Caden Bodine is arguably the best catcher in baseball. He's an incredible player. Um, he's not draft eligible this year, I don't think. So that's probably why. But he'd be the only one on this team who would show up, in a top 3 round kind of draft pitch,
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
draft mock. But again, this is, I think, the best pitching staff in the tournament this year. LSU maybe, but I mean the team ERA is sub 3.3. They have less than
Second best
three
in
and
the
a half.
nation.
Yes, less than 3.5 walks per nine. That I mean, this is a team that gets outs, does not allow runs, and fills up the strike zone. I mean, which is kind of a sign of an incredibly well coached team. They had 270 walks and 170 hit by pitches on offense, allow less than 3.5 walks per nine on defense. Just they get free bases and they don't give up free bases, which is usually a great sign for a team that's gonna do well.
You got to
Especially,
mention the whip too. They're the third best team in the nation, 1.19 whip on the year as a team. They
yeah,
don't give up walks and they don't give up hits either.
yeah. And you mentioned that elite three-headed rotation there, but I want to just shout out Ryan Lynch out of the pen, a .59 ERA and 10 Ks per nine. I mean, that is a guy who coming out of the pen, the game is over if you have a lead. And so again, I think the lineup is good enough. I wouldn't say it's a super high powered offense, but they get the job done, and the pitching staff more than gets the job done. So I would look for this Coastal Carolina team to make some noise. But moving on to their opponent in the first round is the University of Arizona, who is one of the historical teams in college baseball. This is their 19th appearance in Omaha or at the College World Series, most recent since 2021. But they have won it 4 times and they've been a runner-up 4 times. Their most recent win was 2012. Their most recent runner-up was 2016. But this is a team who is always in the mix, has shown time and again that they have the ability, the resources, and the desire from a university standpoint to put the power behind the school and say this baseball team is good enough to win the College World Series. Especially with their new head coach. I think this is his first season. Chip Hale, who's kind of University of Arizona royalty. He's been on those national title winning teams. He's got the MLB pedigree. He was a former Diamondbacks manager, but he is a guy who really is Arizona through and through. And at the head of this team, you've really seen that culture get behind him. that Arizona, everyone on that team is fully bought into Arizona, and I think a very big that's a huge statement to say, especially when Arizona's a school who's the likes of Tito Francona, Trevor Hoffman, Kenny Lofton, Red Sox legend Rob Refsnyder, right? Like this is a team with a lot of it's a very storied program, and so for the players to be fully bought into that is a very good sign that hey, maybe they're ready to run it back. It's been 13 years since they won it, but it seems like it might be time again this year.
Yeah, and my old high school coach actually was an assistant coach on that 2012 U of A team. And I was actually talking to him the other day, especially after the UNC win, and he was very excited. He said this was probably the best chance they've had in a long time, which is saying a lot, especially like you just said, they've been in this time and time again. They've had many great
It's
players.
funny to hear in a long time, considering they were the runner-up just 10 years ago.
Yeah, and even it's funny to think that the team they lost to is Coastal Carolina and kind of having that little rematch again, which is going to be fun. Obviously, it's so weird with college baseball because all those players have came and gone, so or came and went, so it's very different now, but definitely that idea there. But I think this team, if you look back into that UNC series, first game was not a great game, right? Obviously, losing by that much in a super regional is not ideal. But the fact that they were able to come back and win two hard-fought games, especially that second game and third game even, and I think the big deal and the big game changer for them is going to be being in the lead in that eighth and ninth inning, right? Because once they get, I think it's Tony Plum, right?
Tony Pluta.
Tony Pluta. He is a stud if you give him a lead. If he doesn't have a lead, there's no reason to use him, right? So I think the biggest thing for them is going to be getting on base, kind of making havoc and staying in the game. Because you see when they get out of the game completely, I mean they're shot. Like you look in the dugout, they're pretty. They kept doing that game one against UNC.
Yeah,
They kept
the thing I
showing
have
the
highlighted
dugout.
here, the
Yeah,
thing
they
I have
kept showing
highlighted
the
on my
dugout, and half the team is against the wall, just standing there, not relaying it. Right. The other games when they were definitely game two because I was a win or go home kind of game. I guess game three was well, but they were more up, they're more active, right? So it's about staying in the game for them, getting to that great closer that they have. And I think guys like White's going to be able to do that for them. I mean, you see him get up, it's something's going to happen, either a hit or just a hard fought at bat. So I think they definitely have a great chance. I don't know if we're going to go into matchups right now, but I think definitely a big opportunity for them. Maybe I don't necessarily agree with my former head coach, but I do think this will be a great College World Series for them.
Yeah, Tucker, one thing before you give us your thoughts is the thing I have highlighted on my sheet here is inconsistency, right? This is a team that went 18 and 12 and won the Big 12. 18 and 12 in conference and won the Big 12, but um, just they've been very up and down. They've had the highest of highs, but like they've had some very low lows, as that UNC game shows, and a lot of that comes down to the starting rotation has been very inconsistent. They've had some great outings and some very poor outings, and I think that's going to probably be the biggest thing for Arizona is who's going to step up on the staff and be a consistent starter. Because if you don't have a guy who you can get two good starts out of in the World Series, you're not going to do very well.
Yeah, so for that reason, exactly, the pitching situation, I have a serious problem with this Arizona team. I think let me check my bracket. Yeah, I have them going straight out of the tournament. Not to get ahead of ourselves here, but I don't think Arizona wins a game here. Um,
Hmm.
they don't have a true ace. Their two primary starting pitchers are a freshman and a sophomore. It's Smith Bailey and Owen Kramkowski, who both have ERAs north of 4. Smith Bailey's ERA is 4.01. But still, you look at the rest of this bullpen, and there's really only like a small handful of guys that they can go to in a leverage situation. And like you said, they're still not getting consistent performances out of everybody on that pitching staff. Meanwhile, on the offensive side, Mason White leads the team in pretty much every offensive category, and Aaron Walton in center field is just as much of a threat as White is. Both these guys gave this team 10 plus home runs this year, but my issue is if Mason White and Aaron Walton aren't hitting, who is hitting? on this team, and they're two of the types of baseball players that the entire rest of the team feeds off of. Where if they're going off, the rest of the team is going to be picked up with them. But if they're having a really slow couple of games, they could drag the entire team right out of the tournament. And I kind of have a feeling like they don't have it all there. And I think the pitching staff is gonna let they're gonna let a lead loose early in their games, and it's just not going to be surmountable in the long term.
Yeah, the way the College World Series is formatted is you cannot afford to have, that game one against UNC type of game. And you're right, it is going to come down to how
Yeah,
Mason White and Aaron
if they
Walton
do that
play.
against Coastal in the first game, they're done. They're
Mhm.
basically done.
Yeah, it's a long road to come back from that. But the one benefit of their team, I guess, is that their two best players play the two most important positions. And so even if they're slumping on offense, they have plenty of ways to rejuvenate this team. If you play shortstop or you play center field, there's always a chance. It doesn't matter if you're 0 for 19 on the tournament. If you make one big play in the outfield or on defense, you can really revitalize the team and say, hey, like I don't have it at the plate, but I'm still fighting every day. So when a team's two best players are at the two most important positions outside of catcher on defense, that it gives a lot of there's a lot of avenues for them to revitalize a team that's slumping. So there are some very bright spots, but there's also some very large question marks for this U of A team. But moving on to the other first round matchup on that A side of the bracket, we'll start out with Louisville, who is kind of these teams here, less pedigree in Omaha. Just 6 appearances, most recently in 2019, but they have won 10 regionals, so they've had some postseason success. They've actually only been to 15, so of the regionals they make 66% of super regionals. So they've got some, we'll say postseason pedigree, but they're not there quite enough. So they're one of the newer bloods, but they played in a very tough ACC. They went 500 in ACC and went one and done in the ACC tournament. But I mean, they walked into the postseason ready to play. They got kind of embarrassed by Pittsburgh in the ACC tournament, but they've showed up in NCAA play, and so it seems like they're ready. Dan McDonald he's a good coach. It's a talented team, but kind of in the same vein as Arizona, it's a very inconsistent team, I'd like to say.
Yeah, I'd agree with that sentiment. There's actually that issue kind of rears its head with a lot of these teams is that they've had stretches where they're really good, but if they're not still like at their peak efficiency in terms of performance when they play these games at Omaha, it's not going to go well if the other team shows up. Um, and we're in like a rare situation where we're not really sure if any or all of these teams will be able to show up when it comes down to it. But head coach Dan McDonnell has taken Louisville to Omaha all 6 times that they've gone. They've all been under his tenure. That they're still seeking the first title. Um, I think it's huge that they beat the number one overall seed Vanderbilt to get out of the Nashville Regional. That's a really really big win against an SEC school. Then you go on and beat U Miami at the Supers, and you host the Supers, which is, I mean, it's nice for them, but they still played a really tough series against U Miami. Miami did not make it easy for them, but they still made their way out of it. And I think that they're actually there's a stat that stands out to me that I think kind of plays in their favor. They've only scored 5.7 runs per game this year, which is it's dwarfed by the runs per game of some of the other teams at Omaha. Oregon State is up there with they score plenty. I think they're north of 8. Coastal has scored roughly 10 points or 10 runs, excuse me, per game since the start of the playoffs. Meanwhile, Louisville has won a lot of close games and runs come at a premium in Omaha. So I feel like Louisville in that way is almost built to last through these closer games where you're really struggling to try and push runs across. I'll also go back to the really dirty stats, the scrappy stats. Seventh in the nation in stolen bases with 155 on the season. The only other team at Omaha in the top 50 is Coastal, and they're ranked 48th. And they're also Louisville are tied for 25th in the nation in sacrifice bunts. So the bunts come back into play again, and it's another case where I think they know how to move runners without having to rely on the home run. Uh, and home runs do not come as often in Omaha. So Louisville, my only issue with them is that the starting pitchers could get tagged. Both their primary starters have ERAs north of 4 again. This time, the junior starter Patrick Forbes has had 107 strikeouts this year and 33 walks and a 210 opponent batting average. But again, the ERAs are just really high on this team, even in the bullpen too. And they're going to need to keep hitters on opposing sides really, really cold and really guessing at all times if they're going to give themselves a chance to move on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have much else to add to that. I think I agree with all of it. I think this is going to be really hard Omaha for them, just given how little runs they score. I think they're playing Oregon State first, so I think that's going to be definitely a rough game for them. Especially with that pitching. Oregon State has a great hitting team, guys who like to put the ball in play and guys who can go yard on a consistent level. So I don't expect much from them this Omaha. I'd love to be surprised, especially after they won and beat Vanderbilt. I think that would be fantastic. They definitely have a big rivalry with Vanderbilt. And so I don't expect much, but I mean, I'm hoping they do. I'm hoping they do well, but not expecting much.
Yeah, the only thing I'd have to add to that is I do very much like Patrick Forbes stuff. I mean, almost 15 Ks per nine. That definitely plays in Omaha as well, where that big open park. If you can miss bats and keep the ball in the yard, that's a good sign that the ERA will be a little bit better in Omaha. I think the biggest question is how much length their starters can give them. If their starters can give them length, I think they're set up well enough with Jake Schwider and Wyatt Danilowitz out of the pen, who are both, I mean, elite relievers. But outside of them, they don't have a whole lot in the pen. It's a team with an ERA north of 5 as a team, and a WHIP of 1.6. It's not a staff as a whole who's going to be able to do a whole lot. But if their starters can give them length, I'm quietly optimistic about what they can do, considering they do have, I mean, they have guys who can mash. They don't score a whole lot of runs, but they have a team. It's an interesting dynamic in that their team OPS is over 900, but they don't score a whole lot of runs, and that's usually indicative of a team that does not hit well with runners in scoring position, which um, is interesting considering how many runners they put in scoring position with all of their stolen bases. And, it's a team with also, they hit a lot of doubles and they steal a lot of bases, and then they can't seem to put it together, put the end product together. But there are signs that if they can put it together, this could be a team who could make a little bit of noise. But again, the actual results on the field have not shown necessarily, which is funny to say about a team in Omaha, but it hasn't shown that they're a national title contender or national title winning level. But moving on to their opponent is a team who year in and year out is at that national title contender. They are, when you think college baseball in the last 20 years, this is if they're not the team that you think of, you probably don't know college baseball that much. Three titles in the last 20 years under Pat Casey, now under Mitch Canham. This is his first time to Omaha as the head coach in his sixth season, but he was on I think two of those national title winning teams. He is he's got the kind of the mentor in Pat Casey. He's been there before. This is a team who has shown in Omaha that they are more than ready to get it done. This is a team, who boasts like of Adley Rutschman, Michael Conforto, Darwin Barney, Jacob Melton, shout out the Astros, Travis Bazzana just last year, and Jacoby Ellsbury. This is a team who has almost just as much pedigree as anyone in the tournament, and has proven, I think, more so than anyone else in the tournament, at least in recent times, that they know how to win in Omaha. And so, a 47-14 record is incredible, but then looking when you put it on the context that they played as an independent and they played 35 games away from home this season is incredible. Their travel was they traveled almost the entire span of the globe in terms of total miles. They played in Hawaii the second to last week of the season. I mean, that's unheard of for a team that was a national seed and hosted a super regional to play that many games on the road. 35 games on the road. You'll see a little bit later in some of these SEC, when we get to the SEC schools. The SEC schools have played over 40 games at home. So for Oregon State to be where they are with the schedule that they've played, with kind of everything that's surrounded the Pac-12 and conference, the conference dissolving, then being together, and they'll be an independent again next year before the Pac-12 comes back together. But with the whole context of what this team has gone through throughout the season, which has really not you haven't really seen that before in a team that hosted a super regional, and so that alone gives you a lot of hope and a lot of optimism about what this team can do in Omaha. Tagged together with the pedigree that they have.
Yeah, I mean, this team is definitely going to be a dominant team this year. I mean, my only thing for them would be their pitching. I think they only really have two starters at the moment. If you obviously win those first two games, that's all okay for you, and you're set up for a nice little break. But they're still trying to find that third starter. You saw they started with James DeCramer in that game three in the Super Regional. Personally played with that guy. He's an absolute animal when he's on the mound, right? Wants to win, wants to beat every single batter individually. The only thing is he doesn't have the experience that a lot of the other starting pitchers in Omaha are going to have. However, what I think saves them from that would be their offense. You obviously have guys up and down the lineup. I want to once again talk about a dude from Arizona, Gavin Turley. If you saw this guy play in high school, you would think he was a college athlete the entire time. Personally saw him hit a ball over the batter's eye against my own team. So walked him on four pitches when I faced him. Got to be smart, got to save the ERA. But I think overall, like with him at the front, he has been an animal in the box since being a freshman, right? He's up to 52 home runs in his career at Oregon State. Definitely going to be a top draft pick in the years to come. And I think that Oregon State definitely are going to have to they're they're gonna have to rely on their offense a lot more than they usually would, I believe, just because of how aggressive these teams are gonna come out hitting wise, and they definitely are gonna really push it those first two games. Given they don't have a third starter, they really don't want to get into that losers bracket where you have to start bringing those guys in who don't have a lot of outings, don't have a lot of starting outings, and I think it's gonna be a real hard push for them. I think they can do it, especially against Louisville. Will be an easy first game for them given their starting pitchers. I I am nervous if they were to drop a game early, that might mean the end of their Omaha run just because of the lack of rotation that they have right now and the lack of experience that after those one and two guys they have in the dugout and even in the bullpen.
Yeah, those two starters, Whitney and Kleinschmidt, are really, really solid. They're both really young too. Freshman is the starter Whitney, and a sophomore is Kleinschmidt. Uh, I just pulled these stats from the super regionals because they're so ridiculous. They combined for 21 strikeouts in 10.2 innings pitched in games one and three versus Florida State, which are no pushovers in the world of baseball. Uh, Dax Whitney alone is on a streak of 22 strikeouts in his last 10 innings and two thirds. And that's just alone. That's not with Ethan Kleinschmidt's stats added in. So those two guys are really good. And this is the first team so far where I'm not really worried about the pitching uh, almost at all. I mean, because they're both really solid. And then when you go to the bullpen, they're really solid in there too. They've got plenty of guys who can get swing and misses. Wyatt Queen's got 58 strikeouts this year. Nelson Keljo has 60 Ks on the year. There's a couple of other names in there with big double-digit strikeout counts. And like you said, Barrett, missing the bat in Omaha is huge. So I think Oregon State's pitchers will be able to keep opponent batters at bay. But I'm just nervous about this offense because they've relied most of this season on huge outbursts, like big crooked numbers, 6-run innings, 7-run innings, and early on in the game to really punch their opponent in the mouth. But I don't know if they're going to be able to do that to these teams at Omaha. And if they can't get off the blocks quick enough, I don't know if they'll ever get off the blocks. a long cold stretch could send Oregon State straight out of this tournament in a really bad way. I don't think it's going to go that way for them, but I would be nervous and I would be looking to the offense to strike early and strike often. And if they don't, I'd maybe start ringing the alarm bells for this Oregon State team.
Yeah, I mean the only thing I'll say to that is I'm not super concerned about the offense because of the fact that the top three in that order is as good as any top three in the country. Gavin Turley, as you hit on, Max, is one of the best power hitters in the country. Ivor Arquette is one of the best players in the country. And Trent Caraway, who had a very down season this year, was batting 235 coming into the postseason. He's now batting 270. He has been the best hitter in the country over the last 2 weeks. He's on another level right now. And when he's on, he's on. He's one of the highest rated recruits, I think, in California history. He's a guy who can really be a guy. So I'm not necessarily worried about the lower regular season, especially with what he's done in the postseason. And then in terms of the pitching, I'm a lot closer aligned with Tucker than I am with Max on this. I will say because as someone who's watched Pacific Northwest baseball, albeit on the D3 level for the last 6 years, the ball flies up there in Oregon. My brother played Division 3 baseball in Oregon, but the ball flies up there. Whatever it is up in the air, it's super windy up there. So a team ERA of 4.3 may seem higher, but when you actually watch the games, like these guys have stuff. They got some big old dudes coming out there pumping north of 95, just guy after guy after guy, and the ERA may be a little bit elevated, but I'm not super worried when you go from a very hitters friendly environment up in Oregon to a much more at least neutral environment in Omaha. So Oregon State is definitely one of my favorites for Omaha this year. I'm very very positive on them. Moving into the B side of the bracket though is where we get some of the more fun matchups. We'll start it out with UCLA here, who is just a one-time champion, one-time runner-up, but former Pac-12 team, one of the bastions of college baseball. We'll say the school graduates include Jackie Robinson. Ever heard of him? Garrett Cole, Trevor Bauer. That they were both on that 2013 team, I believe. They actually both might have been on that 2010 and 2013 team. I'm not entirely sure, but I know they were. Garrett Cole was on the 2010 team. Trevor Bauer, I think, was on the 2013 team, if I'm remembering correctly. But again, a lot of history in this UCLA team, which we've said about, numerous teams here in Omaha. This was a year with not a lot of repeats, or actually zero repeats, but a lot of teams getting back for the first time in a while that have been, blue bloods of college baseball, which no one would argue UCLA is not. 47-16 this year, first year in the Big Ten. We're undisputably the best team in the Big Ten, and they host probably. I've said this a couple times, but I think the biggest snub for a Golden Spikes finalist in Rock Chalowski, who posted a 1.236 OPS and 23 home runs and played elite defense and did not get nominated for the Golden Spikes. He's been incredible. He beat a very good UTSA team, and he looked like the best player on the field. This UCLA team could definitely make some noise here in Omaha.
He was named National Player of the Year by Perfect Game.
Yeah, and
That happens.
wasn't even nominated for the Golden Spikes. I
Yeah.
think, yeah, that it's one of the crazier snubs I think we've seen in a while. But
Yeah, and he's definitely he's the catalyst of this UCLA offense, and he's a member of a core four of sophomores they've got over there at UCLA. Between him, Roman Martin at third base, Mulavai Levu at first, and Dean West in left field, all of them batting at least 315, all of them in or like around 900 OPS, if not north of 900 OPS, to go along with Chalowski's 1200 plus OPS. A bunch of these guys with some home runs. Roman Martin has 58 RBIs on the season. Levu has 85 RBIs on the year. He's been knocking them in all year long. The only thing I'm nervous about with these guys is that, I mean, they are sophomores. And for these, like, this is going to be their first taste of the real deal Omaha College World Series. I just hope for UCLA's sake that the moment doesn't catch up to these guys a little bit, because if it does, that could cause some issues. Uh, but I mean, their lead starter is fairly solid. He's got a great strikeout to walk ratio. Does Michael Barnett, the junior, 71 Ks, 18 walks this year in 18 appearances. Jack O'Connor out of the bullpen has a 1.80 ERA. Is probably their best guy in there. They've also got a freshman reliever slash starter, Wylan Moss, who's looked pretty solid. Their pitching staff has been plagued with some inconsistencies. It's another team with inconsistency issues. Uh, but yeah, I think they came out of the Big Ten. They came out of a super regional with UTSA after UTSA had to get by Texas, and it's not easy to get out of a regional hosted in Austin. And UTSA did just that, but UCLA gets the better of UTSA. Uh, and yeah, I think this team is just in a really tough spot because they're really, really talented, but I just tend to still hold doubts because of the extreme youth I see on this team. Um, they I think they could put a win. They could put a win together, maybe two, but I'm not seeing a super deep run for this UCLA squad at least this year. But they won't be going anywhere.
Honestly, I kind of have to disagree with you a little bit, Tucker. I do. You're looking at these sophomore players, right? And I know they're sophomores. I know they're 2 years in. But first off, let's look at Phoenix Collar, right? Played for the SoCal Giants out of California in club ball in high school, right? National tournaments throughout his time. Obviously doesn't compare to Omaha, right? But he's clearly stepped up this year. Clearly he's been someone who can step up for the team. But of course, and I mentioned it, I am going to talk about Rock, probably the entire UCLA section for me, because he's someone who played for Kansas National, right? Won two state championships, one with Gavin Turley over at Oregon State. He he played in the MLB prospect games. He's just been labeled perfect game National Player of the Year. I think what these sophomores are, and I agree with the fact that they're very good and they're definitely going to be a little bit of energy for this team. But I think it's also going to be a big reason why this team goes far is because they rely on those young athletes, right? They're not putting them to the side. They're not saying, all right, yeah, these guys are great, but we also have this senior, this. No, it's like our team as a whole is great, including those young guys, including that. So I think UCLA, I personally have them doing pretty good. I think this is going to be an opportunity for someone like Rock to really show that he did deserve that Golden Spikes win, right? And I think, I mean, that definitely put a chip on his shoulder, right? And he's already a great player, and this is just going to be something that motivates him to do even better.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say is it is a very young team, but I think one of my favorite things that gets said quite often by announcers once we get to Omaha, mostly about freshmen though, is once you get to Omaha, you're not a freshman anymore, right? You finished your finals, you played a whole season, you're a sophomore at this point, you play so many games, and technically speaking, you are now a rising sophomore, right? And it gets said so much about freshmen in Omaha is you're not a freshman anymore by the time you get to Omaha, but I think that's a good way to look at this very young UCLA team as well. It's not a team of sophomores. It's a team of guys who have, over 100 college baseball games under their belt at this point. And, when you play as an LA team in the Big Ten, that's a lot of travel as well. That you get to know each other a lot. You get to kind of really know who you are as a baseball player and how you react to a long season. Similar to Oregon State, not to the same extent because of the miles, but, you know, it's young in terms of age, but in terms of experience, I wouldn't say it's that young of a team. Is the only thing I'd say about UCLA. And the only problem I have with UCLA is probably, which is going to contradict a little bit what I said, but some of the younger arms, which is a little bit different than a young position player in terms of the mental side of things on the mound. But I think UCLA, if they can get a couple of good starts, I think they'll have a decent shot. But I hate to say it, but I think they won't struggle to have a hot start considering their first round matchup in Murray State, who is having their first appearance in Omaha, just their fourth appearance in the NCAA tournament. Really, no, not a historically great or notable baseball school. Not, I think they've only had three players ever, and even make it to the major leagues. Not a team you necessarily think of when you think baseball. And even when you think Murray State Athletics, I guarantee baseball is probably, John Morant is probably the first thing you think of. And then you think of probably like six to seven other things, maybe some Olympic sports. I have no idea. And then you think baseball. But, Dan Skurka's got his boys rolling. 44-15. They won their conference. And they have really shocked the world. And they put a very good Duke team, buried them in the ground, and said, no, this is our year. Kind of a great Cinderella story. And they can hit they can hit the heck out of the baseball. Jonathan Hogart has he's one dot in it too. An 1162 OPS with 22 home runs. Carson Garner has an one also one dot in it with a 1027 OPS and 17 home runs. And as a team, they have a 929 OPS to go along with 78 home runs. The only issue with this Murray State team, which is kind of felt like a thing we've been saying about quite a few, is the pitching staff. But unlike some of these other teams, is they don't have the talent at the top of the pitching staff, and outside of Shuddy, who had a pretty good appearance, a pretty good outing, um, I don't think there'll be a whole lot of disagreement from y'all. But I don't really see a whole lot in this Murray State team. It's a great story, but I think their run comes to an end 2 games in here.
Yeah, and I said it earlier, like I'd love them to come out and just surprise the world, right? It's what Omaha's about. You know, you love having that team that's kind of an underdog in there that squeaked its way into a regional, kind of not from a conference you'd expect. And then, whoa, next thing you know, they won the regional. It's like, all right, they're gonna lose in the super regional, right? They're not gonna beat this team. Whoa, they just won the super regional. So you love to support them when they're in Omaha, right? You want them to do great. You want them to definitely bring, new talent to their organ or to their school and obviously a lot of nowadays with NIL, a lot of money to that school. So it's definitely something that excites me. But I can't disagree at all. I don't see this team going past that first round losers bracket.
It's definitely going to be tough for them, but I think that this there's a lot of heart and there's a lot of passion in this Murray State team. And baseball is a weird sport where sometimes that level of like emotion within a team can push them beyond their ceiling. And I have this really just weird feeling that Murray State has at least a win in the tank going into Omaha. And some of it is because of some of it's just because of how talented their hitters are. I mean, you mentioned Hogart. He went absolutely ballistic in supers against Duke. He hit a home run in game two and hit a pair of bombs in game three to finally push Murray State over the edge. By the way, at game three, how about that ending? An out that's called back and you got to play it again, and they just did the celebration on the field. Like, come on. But like, it was really awesome to watch. And the pitching is 100% like it will be the reason that Murray State lives or dies in the opening 2 games of this College World Series. Their hitting should be absolutely fine. I mean, Dominic Decker, 361, 982 OPS. Dusty Mercer, 352 average, 914 OPS. You mentioned their team OPS is ridiculous. These guys get on base a lot, and they hit the baseball really hard. It's just going to be a matter of stringing it together between players and not just having like one or two guys go crazy and everyone else goes really quiet. And then, of course, the pitching staff has to hold it together. They absolutely have to. This is another one of those teams where most of the pitching staff hovers somewhere between a 4 and a 5 ERA. And they've been able to score a lot in the postseason so far to help that. But, you get to Omaha, you're going to have elite pitchers on the other end, and you're also going to have extremely elite hitters. And like we just talked about, this UCLA team is I might think they're a little bit on the inexperienced side, but I mean, I would defer to Barrett when it comes to college baseball knowing, and I can totally see the idea of seeing them as juniors instead of sophomores. But I just think this Murray State team, they have something left to show us. They're not done. They're not done yet. They might be done quick, but they're not done yet.
Yeah, I mean, it's a team with a team ERA of 5.2. That offense is great, but when you face, especially with the side of the bracket they're on, with every single team on their side of the bracket is an undoubtedly elite offense. It's just going to be hard to see where the outs come from, and that's the only thing. But you know, even if they beat this UCLA team, they have to face one of these next two teams we're going to talk about in the next round. Um, but I'd love for them to prove me wrong because I love a great story, and I would love to see Arkansas and LSU lose. But that's just a little bit of SEC bias they're talking. So we'll start it off with this SEC matchup with the only two teams that made it to Omaha from the 13 teams that made it into the NCAA tournament from the SEC being forced to match up in the first round. We'll start it off with Arkansas, who is coached by Dave Van Horn, who has won a national title with this team. Uh, ooh, no, no, he hasn't. I'm sorry. He's been a runner-up to the national title in 2018 to Oregon State, and that 2018 team with Andrew Benintendi it was an elite team. Andrew Benintendi, one of the best college baseball players of all time. But I mean, this is an Arkansas
That
team.
team was so good it makes you think they won the national championship, but
Yeah, I
they
mean,
actually didn't.
yeah, Hessen Kierstead wasn't on that team. He was on the 2020 team. And then I think probably my favorite college pitcher of all time, and Kevin Kopps, um, who started games, relieved games. He pitched 7 innings out of the bullpen one time I watched him. I mean, he was one of the most electric baseball players I've ever seen. But that's the kind of talent you have when you go to Arkansas that Dave Van Horn has had on his teams really his whole career. He's looking to finally get that elusive national title though. He's been there, I think 23 years is how long he's been at Arkansas. I maybe a couple years off here or there, but he has not been. This is his first time in Omaha since 2022 with a very good team. This is a team that's been ranked at the top of the country all season. They've been number one at times. 20-10 in the SEC, especially in this SEC that was so up and down this year. Incredible. But as I mentioned about Oregon State, how many games they played on the road, Arkansas has played 41 games at home, which, you know, 37-4. They were dominant at home, but Omaha's not a home game, and it doesn't matter how much you travel, how well you travel. There's going to be more non-Arkansas fans than Arkansas fans, so we'll see how they respond to that. But I mean, this is a team that hitting, pitching 1 through 9 in the order, 1 through 3 on the staff. This is a team that has absolute dogs, and they are definitely going to be one of the favorites going into it.
Yeah, Arkansas looking for their first title in school history. These guys hit the fourth most home runs as a team in college baseball. It's the most in the field at Omaha this year. But I mean, as we mentioned before, runs are a commodity in Omaha, and home runs also are a commodity. The ball it stays in Charles Schwab Field. It's a big park. But this Arkansas pitching staff also led the nation in strikeout to walk ratio. They struck out about 3.5 more batters than they walked on the entire season. Uh, their walks per nine is only 3.12. They just do pretty much everything right. And like you said, Barrett, they've spent time as the number one team in the country this year. I think they're the average fan's obvious favorite to win everything here at the College World Series. They came out of a tough SEC schedule. I don't care how many games they played at home. The SEC is still the SEC. And they wiped the floor with Tennessee, clinching game 2 of the Supers in Fayetteville. Yeah, only took 2 games to get by the Volunteers, who were, again, one of the better teams in college baseball this year. That's how the SEC works. Arkansas has also got a great lead starting pitcher. Zach Root has been absolutely outstanding this year.
Oh,
92 2/3 innings pitched, 119 strikeouts to 31 walks. Who does that? This man is ridiculous. Not to mention Gabe Gakeley out of the bullpen this year. He's also started games for them, but he's absolutely the leader of their bullpen. And I haven't even talked about the offense yet. How about the Bash Brothers, man? These guys they might be a better story than Murray State. The Aloy brothers, Wahila and Kuyo over at Arkansas. Wahila got there first, and Kuyo followed in his footsteps. But now they're two brothers from Hawaii playing together, the Flying Hawaiians. They call them the Bash Brothers as an homage to the original Bash Brothers, and they call them that for a reason. Wahila has a 348 average this year, 20 homers, 64 RBIs. His younger brother, who DHs for them, a 330 average, 13 homers, and 70 RBIs. Now imagine being the younger brother and knocking in more runs than your older brother. That's infinite bragging rights. This team just looks like so much fun. Those two brothers are also two of six Arkansas hitters with a higher than 320 batting average. This team is so good. My only note for them is that if the pitching staff collapses, then they're in trouble. But this is not a pitching staff that is like even remotely close to a collapse. So for me, Arkansas, one of the stronger teams, if not the strongest team in this tournament field.
I'm so glad you mentioned the Aloy brothers because if you didn't, I was going to. I mean, definitely an exciting team. Like, I think had a very difficult ending of their season, right? Didn't do great in the SEC tournament. I think they lost first game to Ole Miss. Um, they lost like a decent amount of their series near the end of the year. Was very skeptical as they went into that regional. And then they kind of just from that point on just turned it on and just started dominating once again. I think this is obviously, even though they are the highest ranked team going into this, they are definitely one of my favorites, if not my favorite for this. I agree. I think the pitching is going to be very strong, especially out of Root and Gakler. I think they're both, those two alone could carry a team right through a game. And I think they're not even necessarily the only two arms that they have, right? They definitely have one heck of a bullpen. And then once again, the Lloyd brothers. You get two brothers on a team, especially in college baseball. Who knows? Maybe he gets a little, maybe put them back to back, go back to back bombs, get the team going. I don't know. But it's exciting. I think this is going to be, we'll get into this for sure. And we haven't even talked about LSU yet, but this is going to be probably one of the best games, probably the best game in that first opening day for the College World Series.
Yeah, I think you'll have summed up everything there is to say about Arkansas. The only thing I do want to do real quick is just give it a shout out to Cam Kojal, who neither of you mentioned, but he's arguably the best hitter on this team. I guess in terms of pure slug. He's not, Wahiwa Loy in terms of on base percentage, but the man can hit the ball and he hits the ball far. So I just wanted to give a quick shout out to Cam Kojal there before we got into our LSU comps. Who LSU is the college baseball team. I think outside of Texas and LSU USC, LSU is the team you think of when you think college baseball in history. With the likes of Skeens and Cruz just a couple years ago, Bregman and Nola in the late
DJ
2000s.
LeMahieu.
DJ LeMahieu, right? I mean, this is a team that has had some of the greatest coaches in college baseball history. And it seems like every time one coach retires or steps down, they reload. Jay Johnson, who's in his fourth year at LSU now, they took from Arizona, which will be a fun little storyline if Arizona and LSU manage to link up in the championship game. That'll be a fun little storyline. But this is an LSU team who a lot of people thought would have, following last year, they had to reload after that national title. This was a team that a lot of people had high hopes for, but they didn't think was maybe at the top echelon of the country. But just I want to shout out before I let you guys get into it. I want to shout out their pitching staff, namely Kate Anderson and Anthony Ianson, who are just two of the most electric back-to-back pitchers you're going to see. Kate Anderson with a 3.58 ERA and 2.24 Ks per nine. Anthony Ianson, 2.7 ERA and 13 Ks per nine. And as an entire staff, a 3.8 ERA, which is the best in the tournament. Just a little bit better than Arkansas's, but just it's a pitching staff that is lights out at the best of times and a must watch at the worst of times. And that's not even mentioning one of probably the most electric arm in the country in Chase Shores, who, he doesn't always get the results, but man, he's going to go out there and he's going to throw 100, and then he's going to throw just the most disgusting, like 86-mile-an-hour slider off of 100 you've ever seen. He is much watch television at the end of those LSU games, and I think if he's on, which he's looked like he's been on the last couple weeks with this staff, it doesn't matter how the team hits, and they hit anyways. But this is a staff alone. You could trot out, the Fordham Club baseball team, and I think this staff is good enough to take them to a College World Series.
That's a
That's
bold,
big. That's
that's a
big.
bold take. I mean, I have to agree with everything you're saying. Like, I think what's great is we've said this time and time again, no repeating teams in this College World Series, but especially in the second group, you have very historical teams in this College World Series. I mean, LSU definitely. I mean, they beat Arkansas in the series last during the season, so beat them. And one of the games they beat them pretty bad. And I think one guy I really wanted to focus on is probably Jared Jones. Um, I think the way he hits the baseball, you were talking about it with Arkansas. He hits the ball and he hits it far, which is a big deal in Omaha, given the wind and given all that. It's those big flies. They're obviously important in any big game, but in Omaha, it's going to really mean something. So he's definitely someone I'm really looking forward to hitting there, seeing him hit. I do agree with the pitching staff, but I think that this team, while they are technically ranked lower than Arkansas, like I've said again with talking about Arkansas, this is going to be one heck of a game to watch these two iconic teams face off.
Yeah, titanic matchup for the fourth and final of the first round at the CWS. I also thought it was pretty interesting that only two SEC teams wound up in Omaha when they got a record 13 bids to the tournament overall. Kind of a tough showing there, but it was also kind of a weird year. So I think the SEC gets off sort of scot-free this year in that regard. But yeah, this LSU team is extremely talented. And the College World Series is one of those places where if you have two absolute dogs of starting pitchers, you can run with them for a while. And I think, Barry, you hit it right on the head when you mentioned Enyenson and Anderson at the top of this. They are a two-headed monster, the likes of which I don't think I have seen in college baseball, the likes of which, I mean, you almost never see in Major League Baseball anymore. It's really just ace and then a bunch of guys who are like really solid behind him. But Enyenson and Anderson are both aces in their own rights. 163 strikeouts to 28 walks on the year for Cade Anderson, 142 Ks to 35 walks for Enyenson. But it's the lower ERA for Enyenson. And their bullpen is also really solid. It's a younger bullpen, but it's shored up by Zach Cohen, the junior. He's a 3.09 ERA in 46 and two-thirds innings. And then a freshman reliever, too. Kassan Evans is tied with Cowan in saves on the team this year with 6, 1.90 ERA. Technically makes Kassan Evans the best reliever in the LSU bullpen as a freshman. Want to highlight another freshman with this LSU team, too. Derek Curiel, the left fielder. He leads the team in batting average and an on-base percentage. He's a freshman who walked more times than he struck out. I feel like there is something to that. And this is an LSU team that, like, yes, the players file in and out of these programs, but this is LSU's 20th appearance at the College World Series. They're tied for 6th all time. They've won 7 national titles in their history already, which is the second most in college baseball history. This is a program that knows how to win, and whoever you plug into that program, it's going to make a winner. And this LSU team, can be a winner. They stumbled early in regionals. A lot like the alarm bells went off for a lot of people when they lost to Little Rock, but since then they completely locked in. They smoked West Virginia at the Super Regionals, and so there were rumblings that the LSU had kind of an easy path uh, to the College World Series, uh, but they still had to like they didn't play close games with West Virginia, like they handled business against the Mountaineers. So I really think LSU is going to be able to ride behind Edmondson and Anderson as far as those two guys have gas left in the tank.
Yeah. So I mean, what more can you say about that? The one thing I do want to shout out is Houston and St. Pius X alum Kason Evans, who is, St. Pius X, home of the Kubiaks. All the Kubiaks went there. Gary Kubiak is actually who their football field is named after. My high school coach. All the Kubiaks now with the Niners basically, but just shout out to Kubiaks, who was my high school football coach. Um, but that will conclude our little breakdowns of all the teams. Quickly before we go in and give you all our brackets, I want to just go around the horn here and get a dark horse, not necessarily who we think we're going to win, a dark horse, who we think is going to be the player of the tournament, and then just a cool story you think is who's going to be the best story, whether that's a team, a player, a storyline of any sort. Let's just go. So dark horse, best story, and player of the tournament. Real quick, fire it off. We'll start with you, Tucker.
All right. So my dark horse, get ready for this. My dark horse is Louisville. They have really unassuming offensive production, but this is a team that, they got to Omaha. They had to win games. I mentioned it before. Miami did not make it easy on them to get through that super regional, but they're still here, and they had to score runs against Miami. And yeah, like their average runs per game is low, but they worked through the playoffs and they got here. They steal bases, they bunt guys over. Like maybe they don't drive them in as well as everybody else, but if their pitchers can get into the right groove, Louisville, I think, can make a pretty solid run based on the side of the bracket that they're on. I think that helps them too. But my best story, I had a hard time picking for this one because I had two in mind that were really good. But I think honestly, it's going to be Dan Skirka and this Murray State team. If they can get a win at Omaha, like just seeing all the emotion from Skirka after they went, just going to Omaha, they got by Duke, and the post game interview where he has his kid in his arms and he's like half crying and like just he loves his program so much, and he could not be prouder to bring the Racers to Omaha. But it is really obvious that this team loves him back just as much, if not more, and they're making Murray, Kentucky, a very, very proud small town. Shout out small towns, real quick. Murray has like 2,000 less people than my hometown. So shout out to the small towns out there, and shout out to Murray, Kentucky. I hope you guys go crazy. Most outstanding player. I'm going to go with Anthony Edmondson. I think he's going to carve, and we'll get to it in a second. But the way my bracket works out, Edmondson is going to win 2 games for LSU against Arkansas, and then probably win game 2 of the CWS final.
Yeah, so my dark horse is going to be Arizona. You'll see it as we go through my bracket. I think they're a team that, they might get punched in the mouth pretty hard. It might lose a game, but I think it might be pretty hard. It might be like a Mike Tyson level punch that they won't get up from that game, but I think they'll fight through. I think they'll give themselves a pretty good shot at winning the World Series. Um, I think the story would definitely be the Aloy brothers. Especially if they win it all.
They were my
Seeing those
second.
two on the field would be pretty cool, bringing it home for the state of Hawaii. So I think that'll be very, very cool for them. Um, I mean, the Bash brothers, they're definitely going to be a cool story to watch throughout this Omaha. Um, and I think player. Probably Rock. I could see Rock Chalowski going because I mean he's once again has that chip on his shoulder, right? I don't necessarily think UCLA is going to go all the way, but I think he's definitely gonna play some amazing baseball, not just with the bat in his hand. I think where he's really going to shine is going to be in the field, making some big time plays up the middle for UCLA.
Fair, fair, yeah. So my dark horse is maybe not the darkest of horses, but I had to shout him out in some way. It's Coastal Carolina, who I think has one of I'm not gonna say the most electric pitching staff because
I
that's
think
definitely
they
LSU,
qualify as somewhat of a dark horse.
but I think the
They're
best.
ranked, but they're a ranked dark horse.
Yeah, I know they were a national seed, but I think they're kind of flying under the radar behind, like UCLA, Oregon State, Arkansas, and LSU. So I think they're maybe like the fifth favorite here right now. So I think that counts as dark horse, and I had to find some way to shout them out because that is a great pitching staff, and I could definitely see, if some things fall their way, they could definitely walk out of Omaha as the champions. My player, yeah, we'll go my most outstanding player. Kind of a cop out, but it's either any of Gavin Turley, Ivar Arquette, or Trent Caraway. Whoever decides to hit the home run that wins Oregon State the title, because
Oh,
whoever hits the
you've
last
got a deep bracket story built.
yeah, whoever hits the last home run of those three is who's going to win the most outstanding player is either Gavin Turley, Ivar Arquette, or Trent Caraway. Because those three guys are incredible to watch at the top of the order. They're always on base for each other, and they're always trying to one up each other. So that's a great story. But then my story of the tournament is going to be Chase Shores. He came in as a freshman as the one of as probably I think he was the number one pitcher in his class. He came in as a freshman, was lights out for like he started 4 games as a freshman, was lights out, and then injured his elbow and got Tommy John. Missed his entire sophomore season, and then he's back this year. He struggled early, and he's been lights out for about the last 2 weeks. He has that 100-mile-an-hour fastball and those disgusting off-speed pitches. He is my story of the tournament. To kind of coming back from injury, being so highly ranked. He's going to come back from injury, and he's going to be the hero that LSU needs out of the bullpen. So those are our dark horses, story of the tournament, and most outstanding player. It's kind of time for what everyone's really excited for, a little bit of bracketology. It's not March Madness, but I would say it's better. Here, we're going to just run through our brackets real quick. I guess the way we'll do it is we'll run through our entire bracket. So, Tucker, you'll give us your whole bracket, maybe a little bit of explanation here and there where you see fit. But
Yeah.
then we'll go to Max, and then I'll finish us off. So, Tucker, let's hear it.
All right. So, game one, Coastal Carolina versus Arizona. We're going to start off really interesting here. I have Coastal, and it's because like I explained before, they're built for the tournament, and I really have some serious doubts about this Arizona team, especially when it comes to their starting pitching. I think Coastal Carolina is going to be able to jump all over them early on in that first game, and they're not going to look back. So Coastal Carolina in game one. Game two, Oregon State versus Louisville. I have Oregon State getting through. I don't think that needs much explanation there. UCLA versus Murray State. Here's where it gets interesting as well. This is Murray State's one win for me from Omaha. I think they get by UCLA, and I think it's a shocker. It will shock the world for that one game. Only problem is for Murray State that LSU is going to beat Arkansas in the opening game, game four, send Arkansas to the losers bracket, but LSU, they're going to play Murray State in that second game, and Murray State goes down from there. So sort of moving towards that second group then, LSU, I have getting by Murray State. Coastal, I have getting by Oregon State. So Coastal going all the way to the semis in the winner's bracket. I think Oregon State, I think their offense is going to run out of juice a game into the tournament. And it's not going to be for lack of hitting the ball hard. I just think they're going to struggle to hit the ball out. And it's real. Yeah, I think mine's the one with the LSU logo, I think. Or unless you just have multiple.
Revealing my logo. Revealing my picks.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Losers bracket. Yeah, no, I don't think this is mine, but losers bracket, Louisville versus Arizona in the top end. I have Louisville bouncing Arizona. Arizona's gone in two. Again, Louisville is my dark horse. I think they lose a game to Oregon State, getting punched in the mouth on the offensive side for Oregon State at least. But then I think Louisville comes back because they are one of the scrappier teams, and they don't like getting punched in the jaw. And I think they're going to take that out against Arizona. Arkansas and UCLA. This one was pretty easy for me, but it's an unfortunate two-game exit for UCLA. Arkansas moves through on the losers bracket. Staying down there, Arkansas versus Murray State in the second losers bracket game. I have Arkansas going through here as well. Say goodbye to the Racers, but they get to play three games instead of just two. So shout out to Murray State, but Arkansas is just they're so good. I think they lose to LSU that first game, and then they wind up playing LSU again in the semifinal. On the top end of the bracket, Louisville and Oregon State in an elimination game. Remember how I said Oregon State ran out of juice? Yeah, they're still out of juice. Louisville goes through against Oregon State in the quarter, and we get Coastal versus Louisville on the top for the semifinals.
Jeez.
Coastal in the
Dark
winners
horses all
bracket.
over the place.
Coastal in the winners bracket. Louisville is winning two games and is going to the final. This
Jeez, we got hot takes all over the place in Tucker's bracket. All right,
this
let's. All right,
this this Louisville team, I really think this Louisville team is cut from a little bit of a different cloth. They didn't score a lot during the regular season, and their pitching staff has been really inconsistent. But they have what it takes pretty much if the stars align to move through all of these games. And I imagine all of these games are going to be close. They may all even be one run. But I have Louisville going through to the final against, on the other side of the bracket, Arkansas versus LSU. I think LSU in the winners bracket takes advantage of the one game they have to lose and gets by Arkansas, winning at least one of the two games that Arkansas has to play to get by them. Because one of those games is going to be pitched by Enyenson for LSU, and nobody's getting by him. So LSU and Louisville in the final for me in my bracket, and for me it's going to be LSU. LSU, like this is where the Cinderella run for Louisville comes to an end. Although because they're my dark horse, I feel like there's some reality where Louisville just puts together some insane performance in that final. But being realistic, at least for the final, I have LSU, and I think they're going to lift an eighth trophy, pull within four of USC for the record.
all right. That's definitely an interesting bracket there, Tucker. I
Yeah,
like it. I
the
like it.
issue with
Hey,
that one was
you
just I had
stuck
a
to your
lot to
guns.
explain.
You stuck to your guns. You stuck to your guns. All right, Max. Let's hear it from you, buddy.
All right, so now looking at my bracket, obviously going to that first game, and for obvious reasons, I had Coastal Carolina winning that. I agree. I think they're definitely a better team than Arizona, especially going into this game. Um, Kind of all I really had for that one, right? Going to the next game, Oregon State definitely over Louisville. I think this is a no-brainer when you look at Oregon State's offense, look at their pitching, they're going to come out hot. Um, and so yeah, let's just go quickly down to UCLA versus Murray State. And I'm just going to say this up front. I think sports is so magical because you have those underdogs and, they really make a big deal. They make people believe. Again, they give people hope and they really send messages about never giving up to people around the world, right? But I do think UCLA destroys Murray State in this game pretty badly. I don't think it's going to even be
But
close.
let me
Um,
pull the rug out from underneath all of that
so,
right now.
so yeah, underdogs are great, but let's forget about that for a moment. They're going to lose pretty badly. And that's all I have to really say about that one. Now going over to Arkansas versus LSU. I think this will definitely, I mean, I've said this countless times. This is going to be the game to watch in that first round of games. I think Arkansas nearly escapes this one. I think it's going to be a close one, and I think it's going to come down to those last couple innings, but I do think they end up pulling this one through. So looking at that first group losers bracket, Arizona, they have shown time and time again that they can, like we've said, take a punch in the mouth and come back for it, right? So I do think they come back and beat your dark horse team. I think it's a close one. I definitely think it's a close one. I think it's hard fought, but I think they nearly come out of that one. And then looking at that second game against, so this one, Coastal Carolina versus Oregon State, I think Coastal Carolina loses that game. I think Oregon State still on the back of their second pitcher, whoever they decide to go 1-2. I think they're really going to push that game, trying to get that extra little break. Um, and then when you go down to that losers bracket, you see this in Arizona throughout their schedule. While they started pretty slow in the season, you see this. They never really lost two games in a row to a team. They did lose series, but they didn't, I think maybe only once or twice or not at all, lost two games in a row to a team. And you saw that in the UNC game and UNC series. So I think Arizona actually pulls it through to face Oregon State in that semifinal. But let's take a quick switch to the second group again, and we're gonna look at UC or Murray State versus LSU once again. Underdogs. They make sports what sports are, but I think Murray State loses again to LSU, and they're quick out, quick out. But congrats for making it. Hopefully you make it next year. Now let's look at the winners bracket. I think UCLA loses to Arkansas. I think Arkansas is just a much better team than UCLA at this point. I know there's a tendency, especially in college, to expect a couple upsets here and there, but I think Arkansas is such a good team that that's not going to happen here. So I think UCLA goes down and even beats LSU. This is kind of my one upset, even though I just said that upsets aren't going to happen that much in Omaha this year. But this is my one upset. I think UCLA, young team. I think LSU is going to be a little tired after losing to Arkansas, which they're definitely going to spend a lot of energy and a lot of arms trying to win that game. Um, and I think going from Murray State to UCLA is also a very difficult thing to do given if Murray State plays the way I'm expecting them to play. So let's go to the semifinals. I think Arizona wins the first game against Oregon State, but ends up losing the second game. I think Oregon State's going to play that first game pretty conservative. I don't think they're going to really try and put their best. I'm guessing maybe even James DeCramer might start that one, um, given that he started the third game against Florida State. Going down to UCLA versus Arkansas, I think Arkansas beats them in one. I think Arkansas in that second bracket is a lot better than any other team. And maybe not LSU, but I think better than the rest of them. So going into Oregon State versus Arkansas, and I said this as one of my stories. I think Aloy brothers are going to help the team beat Oregon State. I don't know how many games. I'm hoping it's 3 games because that's always fun when they go to that third game. So I'm very excited for that. But I do have the Hogs winning. Got the Hogs winning. Even though I'm wearing the U of A shirt, got the Hogs winning.
Fair, fair. Alrighty, into our final bracket, and that would be my own. I'll start out same place. Game one, I have Coastal Carolina beating Arizona. In game two, I have Oregon State beating Louisville. And then in game three, pretty chalk first round, to be honest. I have UCLA beating Murray State. And in game four, I have Arkansas beating LSU. Back to the top of the bracket, Coastal Carolina versus Oregon State, the first iteration. I've got Oregon State getting the better in that game. In on the bottom of the bracket in the B side, I have UCLA versus Arkansas, and I have Arkansas getting the better of UCLA there. Down in the losers bracket, I've got Louisville getting 2 and Q'd. They're out against Arizona, and I have LSU just beating the brakes off of Murray State, maybe 25 to nothing. Who knows? I'm sorry. I love that Murray State's there. They're just not on the same caliber as these other teams. Coming up through that losers bracket as well. Now we have Arizona facing Coastal Carolina, who I had just losing to Oregon State. I have Coastal Carolina getting the better of that Arizona team, and it was a great story for Arizona to get back. I just don't see it in that team this year. And then over on the B side, we've got UCLA versus LSU in what I think is going to be an incredible game, but I think I think LSU is going to get the better of them. They're going to be hot after that Murray State win. They probably wouldn't have wasted too many pitchers. I doubt Ianson would start that Murray State game, so it'll probably be Ianson against UCLA, which you have to like Ianson a lot better than whoever UCLA is going to trot out there. And so my semifinals look quite chalk. You know, you have the four highest seeds left in it, but it's Coastal Carolina and Oregon State, and then LSU and Arkansas. I think both of these are going to go to get that extra game. So I think at the top, Coastal Carolina is going to beat Oregon State in game one, just because of the pitching depth. But then I think Oregon State is a little bit like what happened in the Super Regional. They're going to come out like did against Florida State, and I mean they're going to put up a crooked number early against a really good pitcher. Oregon State's faced some really good pitching. I mean they just beat Jamie, or they didn't beat Jamie Arnold, but they played really well against Jamie Arnold. Um, and so I think Oregon State gets the better of Coastal Carolina and makes it to the championship series. I think in that same vein, LSU beats Arkansas in two games in a row and makes it to the championship series. And we have Oregon State versus LSU. We have probably the most complete team in it versus Oregon State, who has all of the talent, the storylines, the travel, the putting on for the Pac-12. Who shout out the old Pac-12. They actually had three teams in the tournament, which is more than any other conference if the Pac-12 still existed. So shout out the old Pac-12. But I think the series goes to three. I think it'll be LSU versus Oregon State. Um, I think it goes to three, but I think LSU prevails in the end, wins it. Which I said that either Gavin Turley, Ivor Arquette, or Trent Carraway was going to win Player of the Tournament. And usually it goes to the winner, but that's just how good I think those three are going to be. But I think LSU comes out victorious in the end, and so I believe that is two votes for LSU as the champion, one vote for Arkansas, and I was the only one, I believe, to have um, someone who lost game one end up in the championship, which is a fun little fact. The LSU doing it the hard way, but I think their pitching staff is that good that I think they can do it the hard way. I just think um, Arkansas has to win one, so there it is. But that will
I
be it.
I hate to break it to you, but I have Louisville losing in the first game and then going to the final.
Not your dog. Oh no. Well, it was a long time ago. You know. We
No,
did that a
yeah,
long
no,
time ago. I
that's
don't know,
totally
man.
fair. And also, it's Louisville.
Yeah,
So,
I kind of
but
just
watch
forgot
out.
they
But also,
existed.
watch out for the Cardinals, man. Watch out.
I think I honestly just forgot Louisville existed there at the end. But um, that will do it for our little College World Series breakdown. I think kind of a unique thing in WFUV. I'm not sure how much dedicated college baseball talk we have at the station, but hopefully we'll have a little bit more if everyone enjoyed this. I know I had a great time. I hope y'all did as well. But yeah, signing off for a little College World Series 2025 special here. I'm Barrett Spritzer, joined by Tucker Austin and Max Spitza. Everyone, enjoy the week. It's going to be a great week of baseball. See ya.
Go Tigers.